People that work in the wedding industry. Have you ever seen a couple and immediately thought this ends in divorce? What? Photographing the groom and you see his eyes light up when a guest arrives. You look over and it's a cute woman in a short dress. He smiles. Walks up to the woman. Picks her up and swings her in his arms. Best smile I captured of the groom all day. Marriage didn't last 6 months from what I've heard. WOA, that's really sad. I agree. They hired 1 primary and 2 secondary photographers to capture the event. Huge wedding party, I think it was like 20 people. They had over 100 people attend a huge church wedding. I couldn't hardly get emotion from the bride or groom. It was like there was something going on the entire time. The bride seemed really nervous. Groom just didn't show emotion. I did the best I could given what they would give me. Then at the wedding, as the guests were arriving, and right in front of the church and everyone, she could have been a lover, a best friend, or a family member. Who knows? It was just really weird to finally see his reaction. And nothing like that for his bride. I went to a wedding where these two appeared madly in love. I've known them since college. They were always acting like kids in love. The passion and emotion just oozed from them. A week after the wedding, one of my other friends said he had sex with the bride in their hotel room the day of the wedding, while the groom party was golfing. He had just met her a couple of days earlier. Right after the honeymoon, they went back to having an affair. She got pregnant. Marriage was over within 5 or 6 months. The most odd sequence of events. You just never know what's really going on in relationships. I thought this thread might have some fun stories. Turns out they're just sad. Come on, some of them, like the high couple losing their speep over alpacas, are pretty funny. At a wedding, when the I-dos came, the groom said, "I guess." This may be the biggest oof on this entire comment section. Was at a friend's wedding once. It was at the Justice of the Peace. When the judge or officiant came around to if anyone doesn't believe in the union to speak up or forever hold your peace. A loud "uh-oh" came shrieking from the back. It was my friend's 2-year-old son. Everybody was joking, saying it was a sign. Less than a year later, the couple got divorced. He has the sight. This was its first manifestation. When the bride and groom argued over why the groom's mother shouldn't get all money given to them on their wedding day. Yeah, that was a red flag. Ha ha ha, my ex tried to convince me to let his mum take the money that night and we'd collect it the next afternoon when we got back from our hotel stay. Fat chance I'd let the extreme gamblers hold on to that much cash. My now ex's parents were determined to hold all the catering leftovers for us. And everyone who wasn't me. The groom, or the groom's siblings, thought I was beeping out of my mind when I put my foot down and said absolutely not. I will personally put those leftovers in my own car and drive them to my own parents' house if need be. Beep off. No chance. Ex's parents have a large, very pretty yard and occasionally host small events there. Like local graduation party type stuff. Nothing massive. But it makes them a little side cash. They're also greedy and miserable scamming assholes. They had a complete meltdown and finally admitted that they'd sold tickets to a catered meal at their place that very night, and our wedding leftovers were the entire meal down to the cake and everything. They contributed 0 to the wedding or catering. Not that it matters. But they had no leg in the world to assume that food was theirs. They sold our beeping leftover wedding cake weeks ahead of time. They had to rush home and order pizza for their fancy catered dinner. This is one of the funniest things I've ever heard. Not funny for you, of course. But I just can't imagine what kind of lunatic would sell tickets to eat wedding leftovers they just assumed they could get their hands on. I hope they lost money on the deal XD. It was the third time the bride had hired me and all the guys had been carbon copies. She clearly had a type. The type wasn't working. But she wasn't going to let that stop her. She wasn't a quitter. Well, except for the previous marriages. Not actually in the industry, but I have helped out a friend with a few weddings. 2 of the weddings I could just tell they weren't going to make it. The first wedding the bride and groom hardly talked the entire wedding. It was like they had nothing in common. And then later the groom pretty much beeps off halfway through and went home because I quote he was tired. So he just left his bride having to take pictures with the wedding guests on her own. He never came back that evening, so she had to greet everyone off, etc. Funny enough, about a year later I heard they're filing for divorce. Another time was actually last summer. Just before the wedding speeches the groom went go hang out with his friends for like half an hour, leaving the bride sitting there alone and delaying the speeches. Then right after the bride and groom cut the cake he once again went to go hang out with his friends and abandoned his wife. So she was left alone having to mingle with all the guests, and he made no interaction with her side of the guests. He stuck with his friends the rest of the evening. His wife basically had to go and beg him to come and take more wedding pictures. At one point in the evening he actually went for a drive with his friends for about an hour and his wife had no idea where he was. I mean, I get wanting to mingle with your friends at your wedding, but to not even mingle with your wife's family or friends on your wedding day seems quite rude. A drive for an hour? They were getting high. They had a big fight the night before the wedding and were considering calling it off. Until the bride showed up 30 minutes before the ceremony. No one was sure if she would be there at all. The groom danced with his mom more times than he did with the bride. The bride was snippy and nitpicky with the staff all night. The word annulment was cast around and I hope to God they went through with it the next day, because holy speep. Did they sign the papers at the ceremony? Usually those don't get filed until at least the next day. Came here to say this. Something Hollywood often doesn't consider is it is only official once papers have been filed. A few times as a photographer. The couple were usually fine. The families themselves were too different and combative. This is why my husband and I eloped. We keep our families as separate as possible. His side isn't bad and my paternal aunts and uncles are cool. So they would probably be fine. But having my immediate family interact with his immediate family just makes me cringe. Think hardcore Republican vs suburban Democrats. This is why my husband and I eloped. We keep our families as separate as possible. Can you please talk to my wife? We're both from abusive, dysfunctional families. In the beginning we bonded over our commitment to escaping our families and their toxicity. I go to great lengths to keep my family out of our lives. She clings for dear life to her speepty. Abusive family. This literally isn't what I signed up for. Why would I want to spend time with people who have emotionally abused and bullied my wife and crippled her self-esteem? I hate these people. Have y'all tried couples therapy? Or at least suggested you both go to individual therapy? It can be very good for recognizing unhealthy patterns. I second this. Personal therapy really helped me figure out how to make boundaries in my life. The premarital counseling we did also helped us figure out how we wanted to interact with each other's families. I empathize with both of you guys, cause it's hard to see someone you love bashing their head into the same wall. But also it's really hard to let go of familial relationships. Especially if there are events or weekly calls or something that are habitual. I knew I wanted to go no contact with my mom. But it took me 3 years to actually get to that point. It was baby steps. First explaining what I expected of her when we were talking and ending conversations whenever she ignored those expectations. Then I started blocking her number for longer and longer periods of time when she beeped up. The breaking point of not talking to her at all was when my sister complained to me about her behavior. My mom was listening to my boundaries. But obviously she was still the same ugly person, just waiting to lull me into a false sense of security. Even after that, whenever I'm walking around a store or down the block, I get the urge to call her. 'Cause that's when we'd talk. It's hard, and I hope you guys can work as a team to build boundaries around your life together.
Hey guys, if you like this video, then smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more contents like this. And don't forget to press that bell icon to get notified for future videos. Thanks for watching. Click here to see more videos.